Alright, in this example, we have 1 over n plus 3 minus 1 over n squared plus 11n plus 24 equal 2n squared plus 18n plus 28 over n squared plus 11n plus 24. So right now we have three fractions where one has n plus 3 and these two are the same, n squared plus 11n plus 24. So what you would have to do is when you're looking for your LCD, lowest common denominator, is we're going to factor this. So you only factor once because these two are the same. So everything will stay the same. This one will stay definitely the same. 1 over n plus 3 minus 1 over. Now when you factor this, doing the x table as shown in the previous examples, your factors will be n plus 8 times n plus 3. And again, I'm only factoring the denominator. I'm not messing with the numerator whatsoever. And then over here, same factors, n plus 8 times n plus 3. Alright, so I finished factoring the denominator so that when you're solving a rational equation, in order to combine fractions together, they need to have same denominator. Based on what I see here for our denominators, or LCD, has to have n plus 3. Now they all have n plus 3. These two have n plus 8 while this one does not, so I need to include n plus 8. So our LCD is n plus 3 times n plus 8. Now from there, we're going to actually look for our excluded value first. So excluded values will be n plus 3 equal to 0 and n plus 8 equal to 0. When you solve for both n's, the first one will be n equal to negative 3. The second one, n equal to negative 8. So, in your final answer, your answer should not have negative 3 nor negative 8. So if, when you finish solving for a rational equation, if one your answer matches with negative 3 or negative 8, or both, cross them out, and it should not be part of your final answer. Next is to make sure all fractions have same denominator. Now, these two fractions have same denominator that matches with the LCD. They both have n plus 8 and n plus 3. Now the first fraction, it has n plus 3 but not n plus 8. So what we're going to do is multiply top and bottom by n plus 8. So you're going to have 1 over n plus 3, and you're going to multiply by n plus 8 to the numerator and to the denominator. And then everything else will stay the same. So minus 1 over n plus 8 times n plus 3 equal 2n squared plus 18n plus 28 over n plus 8 n plus 3. Alright. So again, all I'm doing is multiplying the first fraction by n plus 8 to the numerator and denominator so that this fraction will have the same denominator as the other ones. Alright, so I'm going to erase the top part to make more room. Alright, gonna write our LCD is n plus 8 times n plus 3. Now the order doesn't matter since it's multiplying. And then your excluded values are n equal to negative 3 and n equal to negative 8. Alright, so again, I mentioned that I'm only multiplying to the first fraction, so when we multiply, basically multiplying to the numerator here, so 1 times n plus 8, meaning that on the top it will be n plus 8 over n plus 3 and n plus 8 multiplying minus 1 over n plus 8 times n plus 3 equal 2n squared plus 18n plus 28 over n plus 8 times n plus 3. Alright, so again, the first fraction changed and the last two stayed the same. Now, like I said before, the order does not matter, so n plus 3 came first and then n plus 8, and the other fractions, n plus 8 came first and then n plus 3. Again, the order doesn't matter if you're multiplying. Now, from here, since the denominators are the same, then the only thing that you need to focus on is just the numerator. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the numerators to make it look easier to work with. So here's the numerator from the first fraction, n plus 8. Now the one thing we got to watch out is if there's a minus, so if I'm going to write minus, what comes after that, I'm going to put the numerator in parentheses. So in the second fraction it has a 1, so I'm going to put the 1 in parentheses, equal to 2n squared plus 18n plus 28. Now the reason I put the numerator from the second fraction in parentheses is if you had a binomial or trinomial term, 2 terms or 3 terms, and there was a minus in front of this fraction, so best practice is when you only rewrite the numerator, put the numerator of the second fraction in parentheses, and then when you're simplifying, you distribute the minus. So here, I want to distribute the minus to the one inside the parentheses. So it's going to be n plus 8 minus 1 equal 2n squared plus 18n plus 28. And then I'm just going to combine numbers here. But had it been a binomial or trinomial terms, when you distribute the negative, the minus, you're going to change the sign of the terms. Make sure you do that in order to get the right answer. If not, then you're going to be doing all the work where your answer doesn't match or your final answer will be wrong. Alright, I'm going to combine like terms here, so it's going to be n plus 7 equal 2n squared plus 18n plus 28. Alright, when you have your numerator just like this, and you have a quadratic equation part because it has that n squared, what you're going to do is you're going to set one side equal to 0. So here my 2n squared is positive and it's on the right side, so I'm going to try and get all my terms to be on the right side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel out n from the left and cancel out 7 from the left. Since I'm minus n on the left, minus n on the right, minus 7 on the left, minus 7 on the right. So on the left side will be 0 equal 2n squared plus 17n plus 21. Alright, so right here we have a quadratic equation. What we're going to do is we're going to factor it, and we should get 2 factors. So the possibility is we might have 2 answers. So I'm going to erase to make more room and then copy this up here. So again, all I'm doing is I'm going to rewrite the quadratic equation up here to make more room. Well, after I make more room. Now since this is equal to 0 and the 0 is on the left side, you can flip it where it's going to be 2n squared plus 17n plus 21 equal to 0. Alright, so when you're factoring, you're just identifying your A, B, C. Now, I'm not going to write out all the steps. It should be expected you should know how to do it. Now, you need to refer, again, it's going back to Chapter 5, mainly 5.2 and 5.3. But, let me write it out. A, B, and C. So the top A times C, 2 times 21, which is 42, and the bottom is 17. Alright, you gotta figure out what factors go that multiply into 42, and then the factors is 17. Now we can't use 6 and 7 because when you combine 6 and 7, those two numbers, the sum will be 13, and it doesn't match with 17. Now the other possible factors we could think of is 14 and 3. So 14 times 3 will can multiply into 42, and then when you combine these two numbers, it will be 17. So these are the factors. So it will be n plus 14 times n plus 3 equal to 0. Now, I don't stop here. The reason is my A value was not positive 1. Since my A value was not positive 1, that means I need to do an extra step. Divide by our A value. So this one I can divide, this one I cannot. So this one will be n plus 7 times 2n plus 3 equal to 0. Now when you FOIL, it should match with that. Once I finish with that part, now I'm going to solve for both n's. So when I said n plus 7 equal to 0 and 2n plus 3 equal to 0. Since these two are multiplying and equal to 0, we just basically set both of them equal to 0 and then solve for n. So the first one, I'm going to subtract by 7 on both sides. So my first answer is n equals negative 7. And then the second one, subtract 3 on both sides. 2n equals to negative 3 divided by 2. So my second answer will be n equal to negative 3 over 2. And before I box up our final answer, I check if one of these answers matches with our excluded value. Had it been this negative 3, so let me repeat. Had this been negative 3, because we do have an excluded value where n equals negative 3, had this been negative 3, then I would cross this out, and then this would be our final answer. Had it been negative 8, then again I would cross out that answer, and this would be our final answer, and vice versa. So Since none of these answers matches with our excluded value, so I am allowed to box both of them. So therefore we do have two answers for this problem. So n equals -7 and n equals -3/2. Again, we check if our answers that we have matches with the excluded value. If it does, that means the one that matches, you cross out, you do not include in your final answer. Because if one of your answers matches with the excluded value, had you plug it back into the original problem, it would make the denominator of one of the fraction or more become 0, and then you're going to have undefined. We don't want that to happen. So that's why we need to check for LCD, find excluded value, and then when you finish doing all the work, you check the answer you have at the end, see if it matches with the excluded value. Since these two does not match with our excluded values, then these two are written as our final answers. So in this case we have two. But had one of them matches with the excluded value, then you would just only have one final answer. Now if both of them had matched with the excluded value, then technically you don't have any at all. It would be no solution. So be mindful of that. Make sure to check your answer with the excluded values. If it match, cross them out. So that way you can determine how many solutions you should have at the end, whereas you might have just one. In this case you have two, or no solution.